Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor, who is a professor. Like, that's for real. I actually am a teacher. And on this channel, I often teach things that I know. I'll teach about, last week I taught about Joan Didion and Yeats, and I've taught about Baudelaire and Rabelais and all sorts of interesting things. But part of being a teacher, and this is trite, but it's true, part of being a good teacher is being a good learner and always learning. So sometimes on this channel, I learn. As I say almost every time I do a video, there was a period of time in between 2002 and 2018 when I started this channel that I paid no attention to pop music, to rap, to indie, anything. A few artists here and there would trickle in. I kept paying attention to Kanye. Through Kanye I learned about Kendrick and Daft Punk, and yeah, I listened to a little bit of music. But in general, I was asleep. I suffered what was called mid-20s music death. And I woke up. But I woke up in September 2018. Now, you know that this video is about Was Xxxtentacion, so you know that he died in June 2018. So the entire time that Was Xxtentacion was alive and making music and people were responding to it and he was defining the zeitgeist, I was asleep. I was raising my kids, I was getting tenure, I was doing whatever it is middle-aged dudes do that isn't listening to new music. So, with the release of this documentary on Hulu, Look at Me, with the release of a compilation album that came out with it that's something of a career-spanning compilation, I figured, what a good chance, what a good opportunity for me to learn who was Xxxtentacion. Now you'll see behind me, I have these little images up here. I'm being cute, but just stay with me here. There's a whole series of books, Who Is and Who Was, where they take famous people and they do little cartoons and they explain to children who they were. So what I'm doing now is my own version of that. Who was Xxxtentacion? And of course, I'm just trying to tell myself. I am just trying to learn this question. I understand that he's very important. I understand he's very influential. I liked his track on Donda 2 with Kanye. But I don't know much. So there's a couple sources. I could go to Wikipedia, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to go with the following three sources. My kids, who are much younger than me, this movie, and the soundtrack to the movie. And we'll see if by the end I have a clear idea of who this guy is. Before I started this video, I thought he was a Colombian American. Turns out that wasn't accurate. I thought he was from Atlanta. Turns out that was inaccurate. I thought he was controversial because of sexual abuse cases. That wasn't entirely accurate. I knew he was part of the SoundCloud something or other, but I didn't really know what that means. So first I asked my kids. My daughter doesn't know much. She's a big Billie Eilish fan. Apparently Billie Eilish is a big fan of Xxxtentacion, which makes sense. So that kind of helps me to understand that he is a very informative, he is a transcendent figure in pop who's able to reach people in multiple different genres, which is very clear. He reaches people in hip-hop, he reaches people in metal, he reaches people in indie, he reaches people in bedroom pop. He's able to get all of those people. My son had a lot more information saying that he liked his music, but that he was a really, really bad guy. And not just for the assault case, which I'll discuss soon, but because apparently he robbed a producer and then extorted him for his laptop. And I don't know the story. My son didn't know the full story either. It wasn't in the documentary. If you know the story of Xxxtentacion and the laptop, please tell me in the comments. So from that point, I went on to the documentary. Now this documentary, there's 10 trigger warnings in the beginning, and there should have been 10 trigger warnings more. I tried watching this with my wife, who's a very sensitive person, very kind, loving, empathetic, and this movie is brutal. The human misery on display in this. I mean, even though his music is filled with references to suicide and bleakness and sadness, you just can't even prepare yourself for the level of human sadness that you will feel watching this documentary. But what makes it so interesting, and what makes it, I would argue, a true world-class music documentary. I've watched hundreds of these things. This is a very, very good music documentary. Not necessarily in its direction, not necessarily in its thesis, but in its honesty. It was produced by his family, by his mother, who I believe owns all of the rights to his music now, who profits most off of a positive image of XXXTentacion's music. But it shows him, it tries to show him as human. But you can't cover it up. You can't cover up his monstrosity. I mean, you cannot cover up how brutal and violent towards women and towards strangers and towards himself. Like, what a just terrible, terrible person he was. That really comes through. Now, at the same time, it does a wonderful job of humanizing it, of contextualizing it, of showing how he was also a good person and a kind person who really reached out to other people. But I have never seen a documentary produced, or a movie, produced by a family member that was this much of a direct assessment of this person with their flaws. I really applaud the directors of this movie. I applaud his mother. I applaud his victim, his main victim, who was one of the stars of this movie. As a matter of fact, I would say that the stars of this movie are his mother and his victim, his ex-girlfriend, more than even XXXTentacion is. I might just call him Jase from now on, because that was his real name, and it's just easier than saying XXXTentacion every time. So I'll call him X or Jase, moving on from here. Of course, he was killed when he was 20. So I'm a better person now than when I was 20. I didn't have the hardships that he had, and I never plunged to the depths that he did. But certainly I would not want to be judged on who I was as a person based on things I said and did when I was a teenager. And that's what we have. That's what we're left with X's legacy. And there is a real indication that he was turning a corner, and maybe he would have. Maybe. Maybe he would have beat the case. Maybe he would have grown. Maybe he would have seen the light. There is a self-awareness and a tenderness and a longing for tenderness which cannot be faked. It can't be faked. I was thinking, like, is he just a sociopath who's faking this? I don't know. He's not. He really has that. That's obviously what people respond to in his music. They respond to that longing for tenderness more than they long for the shows of brutality. And there is a chance that part would have won. But I'm going to do a review of this documentary. Already watch it. Seriously, I don't know what else you're doing for the next 2 hours. Unless you don't want to have a bummer of a time. If you want to have like a nice time, watch something else. I would say the real star of the movie is the mother who produced it, who is asked, why did you make this documentary? And she doesn't give a very clear answer. She is able to explain that she didn't know how to raise him. She was able to provide for him financially, materially. He always has the right video game systems. He's always well dressed, but not emotionally. His father is this sort of shadowy figure who appears and disappears, goes to jail at 10. And at a certain point, Ja says, my mom could not emotionally nurture me. So this is what I'm talking about. That at the same time, we're going to be talking about X as a horrible, abusive person who definitely should have spent time in jail for the abuse that he visited on his ex-girlfriend. At the same time you have that, you have this level of emotional maturity and understanding to be able to say, like, she could not emotionally nurture me. If you've been watching my channel, you know that I am just so happy as a human being, as, truly, for the humanity that is in hip-hop right now, for the efforts that are being made by many rappers, mainstream and alternative, to have African American men understand themselves as human beings with human problems, with frailty, with vulnerability, with a need for tenderness, with a need for guidance, with a need for acceptance, self-acceptance, all of these things, which for way too long have been seen or have been luxuries, are being seen as necessities, right? It's very heartening. That Kendrick Lamar album, it's very heartening. And that's just a drop in the ocean of what's coming. And I think this whole SoundCloud, very emotional stuff that was going on while I was getting tenure, while I was goofing around, not listening to new music, I think this had to be a part of it. This move of overly emotive, overly romantic singing about suicide and self-harm, I do think it must have helped nudge things a little bit further away from the straight, as FT Signifier calls it, kayfabe of masculinity that is in American hip-hop. That is to say, people acting like professional wrestlers, right? So this mother is very clearly ill-equipped. She was 17 when she had him, right? And that's young. And all these things that she talks about, what I could do an entire video just about generational trauma, which again is another topic which needs to be visited by all human beings. Every human being on planet Earth, regardless of your skin, of your gender, of your sexuality, of anything, of your class, you need to visit and be familiar with the concept of generational trauma and the way that it exists, because she constantly excuses the trauma that was visited upon her and upon her child as traditional, as her culture, as Jamaican culture, as, it's not said but it's implied, Southern African American culture. She describes X getting whoopings all the time from her father, but it's not abusive. It wasn't abusive. It's abuse. It is. Hitting a child is abuse. 100% of the time, period. Period. Just, that's it. There you go. Sorry. Sorry, cultures that do that. Sorry. You're wrong. Some cultures are wrong about some things. My culture is wrong about so many things. That's one area of culture that's wrong. Don't hit a kid. Also, don't scream at a kid. But don't hit a kid first. And we see, what's amazing is in this documentary, there's a whole discussion with different members of his group, I don't know, members only, who discuss this in a way very similar to the ways that Kendrick Lamar discusses it, to the way that FT Signifier discusses it as well, that to a certain extent, this kind of violence visited upon young boys, young black boys in America, is also seen as necessary for protecting them in the world, because the world that they're going to have is not going to be the sweet-ass, comfortable life that I had and people who I was friends with have, or my kids have, but it was going to be a harsh life, a very violent life in which self-protection is often in the form of physical dominance. Did I tell you this documentary's good? Because it's all in here. It's all in here. And much like X, she is never a full hero, nor a full villain. You really get the sense that she's just doing her best, and that her best really wasn't good enough. But at the very end, you see that she is now raising, or helping to raise, Ja's kid. And you see that she says that she knows how to do it now, that she learned how to be a better parent, how not to just scream and bully. And this is the redemption of the movie. X was never given a redemption. He couldn't. He was murdered buying a motorcycle. But she is able to have her redemption, because if she raises this child with that nurturing that X needed, the emotional nurturing that X needed, then she will have that growth. She will have that character arc, which he was sadly denied. So she's an amazing figure. The grandmother who raised him a lot as well. There's one little story where Ski Mask the Slump God, not Slump Mask the Ski God, that's a professional skier. Ski Mask the Slump God describes, like, one time he got into his car and the grandmother is like, "You shouldn't hang out with him. He's a bad kid." It's very clear that from a very young age, things happen in families where people write scripts. If you know a psychologist, talk to them about family scripts. My family script was I was a screw-up and I would be a writer one day. Not good. I would have liked a cooler script, but whatever. And I still carry that with me. I still, not the writer part, but I still feel like a screw-up so much of the time. So many of my jokes that are directed at myself are that I'm a screw-up who just can't do anything, who can't handle it, who can't hack it, right? And the script for him is that he was a bad kid. And these kinds of scripts, especially when they're written at a young age, especially when they're not challenged, it's very clear what happens. He grew up and was worse and worse. Now, getting to Ski Mask the Slump God. Now, I like Ski Mask the Slump God. I reviewed his album. It's one of the first rap albums I reviewed on this channel. I had no idea who he was. I didn't even know that he was attached to XXXTentacion till I saw this video. I didn't know that, and I bought the Ski Mask CD. Okay, like I own this on CD. You understand me? Like I really like this album because he is flyer than an ostrich. One of my favorite lyrics in rap history. So Ski Mask is an interesting character on here as well, who's sort of shown as playing the role of a big brother and a little brother for each other. There's a whole other thing you could do about this movie about like people who are really not equipped, like very sensitive, because all human beings are sensitive and need nurturing, and everybody in this movie seems to just not have what they need. So they form these kind of weird codependent relationships with each other, obsessive, unhelpful relationships. You should never be a big brother and a little brother to somebody who's your friend. And he's, Ski Mask is able to describe that X's rise was fueled by his self-hatred. Also interesting, he said that the reason everything sounded distorted was because he bought just a bad microphone, which is very funny. Another member of Members Only describes how part of the rise of X in the underground was that he would film himself beating people. And I do think there's a lot of understanding in this group, because he said they want us to destroy each other. We become gladiators, meaning African Americans become gladiators for the public consumption, mostly by dudes who look like me. Another interesting character, a shady character, is Bruno Dickums, who's a pornography producer who gave X a place to live. He's living in this house that's like a porn house. And this is where, we learn about his about X's Napoleon complex, about his like you actually see in this movie him recording the song Effed Up, and you can see sort of this screamo rap while it's happening. It seems like it's this really dark side, but again, if you're born and you think you're bad, and then you meet a guy who's bad, and then you live with bad, and then you say you're bad, and you're bad, and you're bad. And then, at a certain point, they introduced a character called Geneva. Mind you, I don't know the story. I see Geneva. I see she's an ex-girlfriend. I think, hey, I don't know how this ends. I didn't know anything about their relationship. So this is interesting because I imagine most people who are watching know that this is the woman who he abused, allegedly, who he imprisoned, allegedly, the witness that he tampered, allegedly. And you would never guess it, because what the hell is she doing in the movie? Had he not been killed buying a motorcycle in Pompano Beach, had he not been killed, he probably would have gone to jail because of her. Not because of her. Jesus Christ. See, I don't edit my videos, so I would like to 100% say because of what he did to her. Okay? Anyways. It's because of what he did to her that he was going to go to jail. So I'm certainly not expecting that his victim is going to be talking about the relationship. And so what's great is that I'm able to experience it naively. And it's very clear the amount of human misery both of these characters endure. That like he met her and she had carved the word alone into her leg, and so he carved the word alone into his arm, and just like she was living in a hotel, like in a motel on a floor with her uncle, and you just feel just the desperation. And everybody laughs at Florida. Aha, Florida, everyone's so messed up in Florida. Aha, that's not funny. Human misery is not funny. Desperation's not funny. All those stories. I mean, I guess the only thing that's good about the Florida stories is that they can be from any race. Yeah. Black, white, brown, doesn't matter what it is. These stories pop up and they're just stories of Florida man, and we laugh at it. But there's some real human misery going on here, and the tableau that the documentary is able to produce with just these streets and these palm trees and just this desolation. And like you see these little cute videos that they make together, and he's always asking her to apologize. And then this woman who had been dating one of his producers, like describes these things like this producer, like he beat the producer for making Geneva laugh. And then we have two people, the witness and the victim, describing these beatings. describing how he would take her into the bathtub and almost drown her and beat her. And usually beat her so that you wouldn't see it on her face, but one time beat her so you did see that he beat her in the face. This just really, really grim stuff. You're never going to listen to this music and not think of it. Never. You can't. It's terrible. And of course you have the rest of it in your head. You have sympathy for this kid. But also, you don't have sympathy. Now, he was already apparently in jail for assaulting some manager named Tables. His name was Table. I can't not hear about any more Table, but he's in jail for beating some guy named Table. And then he ends up going back for beating his girlfriend, and then that's when he starts to rise. It's when he has his mugshot, and his mugshot, he looks good in his mugshot, like David Bowie and Frank Sinatra. And oh, what an outlaw, what an outsider. Have you heard this new song by this guy? It's awesome. The grim reality is that this domestic abuse, this severe case of domestic abuse, is what set him off. His second manager, who was the person who managed him to stardom, met him in jail. This was the real origin of his rise. Now again, he's a very talented guy. He probably would have rose at a different time. But to the point where his first single, which I'll talk about soon when I talk about the album, is his mugshot. And it is uncomfortable. Now, I guess also he got big because Drake stole his flow. It's fine. But going back to this Geneva character, like, if you study abuse and systems of abuse and abusers, like, everything is so painful. It's so painful because you hear her talking about him and her reasoning and, like, going back to him. She went back to him for, like, a week, which he would then get hit with witness tampering correctly. Sometimes. Anyways. And she talks about how she has to forgive him because her mother beat her and she has to forgive her parents. Just, the one thing I like to talk about on this channel is you never have to forgive anybody. You are under no obligation to forgive anybody. You're not. None. Zero. Somebody abuses you, it is up to you. I don't care if it's your mom, if it's your dad, if it's your dog. You are under no obligation. Societal, social, maybe social, but not moral. Someone beats you, abuses you, financially, physically, emotionally, spiritually, sexually, you have the perfect right to never forgive them or talk to them again for the rest of your life. If I'm the first person that's ever telling you that, please go see a therapist. I'm not being funny about that. I'm being serious. Like, we need to be freed of this jail, of this idea that if you don't forgive the person who raped you 10 times before you die, you're going to regret it. No, you're not. You're not going to regret it. But we see this generational trauma. We saw it from his mother, we saw it on him, and we see it on her. But what's amazing is the movie ends with her and Cleo together, the mother and the abused together. There is some kind of catharsis, there is some kind of resolution, but it's not really about forgiving him as much as it feels like forgiving the mother. It's very complicated. It's a very rich movie. The last character I'll discuss before moving on to X himself is John Cunningham, an interesting producer. So X only had 2 albums. I didn't know that. I mean, he's killed when he was 20. By the way, we have to stop this narrative about, like, hip-hop stars who die young is just like rock stars who die young. It's nothing like it. It's always like 5 or 6 years earlier than that, Like the 27 Club. How many of these rap stars die before they're 23? Like, most of them. This is like a real difference. Anyways, it just bugs me. I hate when people confuse rap stars and rock stars. It's a totally different life experience, totally different social experience, totally different reaction, totally different kind of fame, totally different social expectations. It's ridiculously different. Jimi Hendrix and Was Xxxtentacion are not the same kind of death. Anyways, so John Cunningham is interesting because he basically was his only producer, it seems, at the end of his life. And he comes across as an interesting kind of father figure, just sort of a goofy white guy, like me more or less, who can play guitar. And I do like that in the very beginning he's quoted as saying, people call X a rapper just because he was black. He was much more than that. As we'll get to, the thing that makes X so interesting, it seems, is just his dynamism. So let's get to X in the movie, because what is traced is a very human portrait of a person who acted very inhumanely for much of his life. It opens up with this vlog that he did. You see he has a little Snorlax stuffed animal. I play Pokemon Go. I love Snorlax. He talks about like how his past is threatening him. Like it's very clear his relationship is very unhealthy. His relationship to social media is very, very unhealthy. He talks to his fans as though they're his friends. He says, I leave my DMs open. But then he's like, every once in a while these weird self-aware things pop up, like fear left and anger replaced it. And he starts talking about the way that he's marketing himself. And he seems very clear of understanding that he is trying to be a villain and trying to play this character. He's also awfully smart at times. Like talking about signing, he signed with a deal that let him have his masters as opposed to a major label that wouldn't, because he wanted to be a partner and not a slave. And this is way before Kanye and Taylor Swift took on this concept. So it's very impressive, right? And we even see him sitting there on the couch looking at the analytics for his music, saying, see if they F with that soft-ish, right? See if they like the soft stuff. So he's also very much a 21st century star because he's paying attention to the analytics. He's trying to see, will my soft songs hit as much as my hard songs? You know, my songs about like, F you in the throat, blah, 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 blah. Does that hit as much as, I'm so sad? Turns out, I'm so sad are the things that hit. We see him as he comes out of jail, freaking out about his success, talking about changing the lineage of the Onfroys, which is his last name, talking about how no one cared about him until he became this, about becoming a villain. He talks about being a cult leader. Very regrettable. Again, this movie leaves in all these terrible things. It leaves him talking about like basically laughing about his accusations. It has him calling the person who he abused, allegedly, a B word, you know? Like he comes across as really not okay. And then we see him and we hear conversations with therapists, you know, with his other girlfriend. It seems as though, would he have turned the corner? I don't know. The girlfriend who he apparently was with when he died, her line was, you be my rock, I'll be yours. The same kind of sense of like just holding on to somebody, just very desperate. There was apparently this real move of trying to move away from fear and towards love. You see him working on his first beat 2 days before he dies. It does seem like he was getting better. Hard to know, you know. I mean, with this much unresolved trauma, with this much fame and power, who knows how it would have ended? But we'll never know. So that's the documentary. An absolutely spectacular work of documentary because of how honest it was with his failures. So then, I listened to Was Xxxtentacion for the first time. I listened to the compilation Look at Me, disc 2. So disc 2, the first disc is like unreleased stuff and B-sides and kind of rare things. So I didn't want to listen to that first. So I listened to the B-sides. And what did I learn about X and his music? A lot of his songs feel like drafts. They feel very immediate. This whole SoundCloud thing, which I totally missed, makes sense. A lot of these beats apparently were like free beats off of YouTube or things he just sort of like took and used. And just that sense of the do-it-yourself aesthetic, the idea of just sort of like putting something out there and getting a response, it really makes sense that this is my first real understanding of SoundCloud rap at all. Okay? Like I haven't really thought about it. And I have a YouTube channel where I talk about music. I got 40,000 subscribers, and I didn't think about this thing. I started a minor in hip-hop studies at my college, and this is the first time I've really thought about SoundCloud hip-hop. I say that to underline my ignorance. Ignorance is profound, right? So there's so much to learn about hip-hop that even with all the stuff that I know, there's so much for me to learn. So I'm really starting to get it as I listen to this. I'm really starting to get how exciting it must have been to be in the SoundCloud era, to have these people popping up, making music, people just like very immediate. And the thing, obviously, that X does better than anybody is this emotional range. I don't know. I don't know if he is the first or the best to do it, but it seems like he really mastered it. To be able to go from like such anger and violence and stupidity to such tenderness and sweetness is really, really quite impressive. And the thing to remember is that SoundCloud is inside music. You make it inside of a computer, inside your room, and then it's played by people who are inside of their room listening to it inside of a computer. It's inside. It's very insular. It's not a band in the basement or not a crew at the block with, you know, boom, 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 you know, doing a cipher. It's very interior, which is what makes the performances that he gave so amazing and electric. As you see him, and he's just an absolute performer, just absolutely out there, jumping around, jumping up and down, totally in control. I was surprised that there's like virtually no drugs on this album. So I guess I really mixed. I just thought the Juice WRLD and X were basically the same. They're not. They're barely even similar, frankly. I mean, emotionally, I guess they are. With a lot of their themes about suicide and the singing and all that. But wow, it's really important to keep them discerned. You know, there's not much about drugs. Like the suicide that's mentioned here is more direct suicide. It's not like killing yourself indirectly. It's like killing yourself directly. Sorry, I'm just going to close this. I don't need to advertise for Apple. I'll advertise for a banana. Smash the like bucket for that joke. Subscribe for that joke. Join my subreddit and make sure you say I joined for the banana apple joke, okay? Leave me a comment about the best joke you've ever heard about an apple or a banana or anything else. Say anything else you want to say. What do you think about Xxxtentacion? What am I missing? Okay? All right. So, speaking of banana, why don't you smash the banana and listen to the song Look at Me. This is the title of the album. It's the title of the movie. It's his first sort of big breakout mainstream hit. This is a good example of his more raw style. Lots of okay, getting ready. Just very poorly produced, blown out, dark sounds, very catchy, just all this bratty, just bravado, just screaming, just weird misogynist stuff. 3 B words, I'm a Mormon, lots of misogyny, effing throats, I just want head. But the thing that I love is just this chorus. Look at me, F at me. Like, it's just, it doesn't even make sense, like grammatically. But this is what you, like, I get it. I get it. If I was a 15-year-old kid and I heard some 15-year-old kid from somewhere in Florida upload this, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, I would have been all over it. Now, mind you, I was a 36, it's like a 37-year-old. Who knows how the hell old I was? I was old. So I totally get the rawness and appeal of this digital underground. Not the Humpty Hump digital underground. I mean like a real underground that exists in the digital space. What I like about this much like the movie shows the different sides of him, this compilation shows the different side of his music. We get to the next song, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be around anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. Odd vocal sounds that kind of like override everything. He seems to be singing about suicide, but then he's sort of like effing you till you come. And then like it changes. It sounds like someone changed the channel. And it's like the song never even really starts. It's just like moaning and singing. And this is a lot of the stuff I get from his music is it feels like a draft. But you know what also feels like a draft? A lot of good punk music. A lot of good indie music. Next song is called Young Brat. Or Young Brat. I don't know if it's about German hot dogs. More of the kind of hey ho, just screaming, disturbing sounds, just everything is just screaming and crazy. And then again we go whipping back and forth between the different sounds of the song Jocelyn Flores. Very sweet guitar sound with this high voice in the background. We'll talk about where the high voice comes from. It's apparently all about a friend of his who killed themselves. And this is that dynamism, you know. And I talked about this when I was talking about Post Malone, where I talked about the value of singing about suicide. On the one hand, you can think that singing about suicide is encouraging people to do it. And on the other hand, and this is the hand I believe more, describing those kinds of severe emotions is cathartic for people and probably helps them not do it because they don't feel so alone. Like the more you realize your feelings are not unique, the less they hurt you. That's a weird thing because everyone wants to feel unique. But like it's impossible for you to have a bad feeling about yourself that is not being had by at least a billion other people on planet Earth, right? Like that, like there's nothing special about your pain, even a little bit. And having someone singing about their special pain and realizing it's the same pain as you, I do think it helps. I like the singing in the chorus. I've been feeling pain just to hold on. Just also underproduced. It's glorious. You know, maybe part of X's value is that he never got to be overproduced. You know, he never got to the stage where he's going to have, I don't know, 10 different producers coming in and tuning everything up and making a really nice, nice, perfect sounding album. Next song is called Depression and Obsession. Just a guitar and voice. A lot of his stuff is just a guitar and voice, going back to John Cunningham, his take, that he's not really a rapper. Depression and obsession don't mix well. That's true. Between like this and like Kid Cudi and a bunch of other rappers, it really does seem like Kurt Cobain might be the most influential white musician in hip-hop, at least in modern hip-hop. That's a challenge. What other white musicians have had this much influence on hip-hop? I just can't think of them. And don't you dare come at me with some Post Malone malarkey about Bob Dylan is really a rapper. And you're like, no, just knock it off, right? Like, seriously. Like Kurt Cobain, I think it's because of this growth in emotional honesty in hip-hop. Kurt Cobain is a good sort of transition to that because he's this romantic figure, this romantic suicidal figure who sang his heart out and blew his brains out. Like, to sort of like, he's a good transitional figure towards real emotional honesty as opposed to his sort of showy romantic side. Everyone dies in their nightmares. It's not true. In my nightmares, I just can't get where I'm going. I have a class to teach on the other side of campus, and no matter how hard I walk, I cannot get to the other building, and I'm late. But that's fine. This really shows, so this is another song that has a sample from the same person who sampled a couple times before, someone named Shiloh Dynasty, and this is part of Bandcamp that I didn't understand. I didn't understand Bandcamp, they would just take stuff and just like, so Shiloh Dynasty was this like underground singer who I guess has stopped. I went on a little rabbit hole trying to find out about Shiloh Dynasty. She's this very interesting singer who made this music. She was sampled, it wasn't cleared, but she was just sampled, and she dropped off the face of the earth. And now, like, her tender singing is enshrined forever in X's music. Just a really cool beat, nice odd voice in the background, and sings about being trapped in my damn mind. Alone Part 3, it's just guitar and more just whining Cobain sounds. It does develop a little bit with a drum beat. And there's a nice little sort of like lead guitar line at a certain point. Anytime there's any development in these songs, I get kind of excited because there's so little development in general. And I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm saying that as a statement of fact. More sort of self-harm chic. Next song is called Moonlight. Whoa. Things really changed here. This is where it's clear that John Cunningham, Opie Cunningham, has like joined in here and is making things a little bit more polished. It's a very cool, spacey beat. A nice kind of whiny voice enters. It's very great and personal. And then his rap is really good. Like, I really enjoy his kind of sing-songy rap. He feels like he's a group at times. Like, he's like a guy who sings, a guy who raps, and a guy who raps sings all at the same, and a guy who sings in a high voice, and a guy who sings in a low voice all at the same time. And a guy who just goes, the guy who's nuts. Like, the guy who's just nuts and is just totally wacky. He's like an entire boy band, all in one. The high singer, the low singer, the rap singer, and the bad boy. He's all of them all at once. He's One Direction. And then, who you testin', F a Scantron, here's your lesson. He apparently dropped out of high school in 10th grade. So it's a pretty good recall to remember Scantron sheets. Did he write all of his own stuff? She's not like, if it's been like 10 years, 9 years, 8 years, you'd remember Scantron. I don't know. Who knows? The bridge is kind of mumbled and sung really nice. I like that mumbly singing. I guess that's the fifth member of his boy band. And then the chorus, he just has great voice. I mean, I said he's not at all like Juice WRLD, except like Juice WRLD, there's something about his voice, some ineffable quality. Is it the vulnerability? Is it his talent? Is it his woundedness? It is his dangerousness? I don't know what it is, but he has something that you cannot fake and you cannot deny. Next song is called Sad. I don't know if this is quoting Donald Trump, but when I see that, because Trump would often like write his tweets back when he had Twitter, and sick burn, and he would just like say something was sad at the end. I don't know. I don't think so, though, because in the documentary they explain that this was one of John Cunningham's first beats that he shared, and it was called Sad Banjo. And he describes how the collaboration process went, and X just put it together in 10 minutes. And the impression that you get from John Cunningham talking is that he did a lot and didn't do much at the same time, Cunningham. Like, he would, like, provide structure and basis, but really it was X who would just sort of drive these songs and get these things out here. It's pretty special. This one here is a very kind of pop beat. You really though feel everything's getting more polished, choppy, distorted synth hits, kind of trap drum beats, and then the pop sensibility really comes in and just repeating the chorus at the end one more time. Suicide if you tried to let go. I'm sad, again, more of this kind of suicide chic stuff. Changes is a very simple piano line that's very clearly written by somebody who doesn't know how to play piano. That comes from me, who does not know how to play piano, who has written songs on piano. So I know this kind of maudlin, like, ding, ding, dude. What if I put like a flat note? Don't. Oh, I'm a pianist now. I'm such a pianist. But it's a good song, though. It's got full singing. We had this other guy singing, too, P&B Rock. Interesting here, this line, "You're changing, I can't stand it." That's really the question about whether or not X would have really developed. Because the thing about being the kind of abuser that he was, this is very clear, like it came from a place of hurt, but it also really came from a place of control. Like he really tried to control this woman and rule over her. So the idea that he would have outgrown that is great. But lyrics like this, like, "You're changing, I can't stand it," and that shows like an inability to like allow somebody to grow. Next song is called Hope. Starts off with R.I.P. Parkland. I don't want to be depressed, but Parkland feels like it was a long time ago. And I'm going to tell you, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. Columbine felt like it was yesterday, a decade after it happened, because it was so shocking and so new. Parkland feels like it was like 10 years ago, but it was like 4 years ago. There have been so many terrible mass shootings that we don't even notice them anymore. I mean, we do, but they don't have the same weight. And that's way worse. It's way worse, Imagine if there were so many terrorist attacks on our soil that like 9/11 was just kind of whatever, as opposed to every single year we gotta bring out the footage and bring out the veterans and bring out the old flags that are dusty, right? Imagine if we had so many anyways. Am I going on a political spiel? No. This isn't political. This is a better way of understanding the relationship between time and tragic events. We should have a lot more gun control. That's political. Kind of a sad song, mourning, computerized flute sounds. I swear to God, I be in my mind. I like how a lot of his sad lyrics are about being lost in his mind. It feels very real, that's the situation that he's in. I swear I want to die. I swear I want to die. Yeah, I'm not all right. Might start a raya. I like how he plays with pronunciation there. Next song is called Before I Close My Eyes. Sad guitar, kind of whispered music. I asked myself the first time I listened to this, what do people get out of it? But I think I understand. I think it really is that feeling of, for a lot of people, they really need to feel someone sees them and feels their pain, and he's able to do that. So, good. The last song on this side is called Train Food. Don't correct me, I'm going somewhere. The last song is called Train Food, and it's an oddly produced song with these train sounds, and it's beautiful. It's about the inevitability of death. It's a poetic image. If this is the direction that his music was going in, then he was definitely going to be making some better music, because this is amazing. He's like speaking and rapping, and there's these sound effects. This guitar line breaks through. Have you ever woken up on a train track without your clothes? It's emotional and powerful, and even ends with kind of a little Eminem turn there. It's really a very, very strong ending, especially the way it was used in the movie to accompany scenes of his death. But it is a reminder of, it seems like a lot of this SoundCloud stuff, a lot of this emo rap is sort of a death cult. It really is obsessed with death, and then the fact that everyone keeps dying doesn't help. And I hope that it moves on, because I don't like all these young people dying, because I like people living, and I don't want them to be romantic heroes. I want X to have served the time that he needed to serve, to get out, to become a better person, live a full life, be there for his kids, and release great music. That's what I want. I don't want any romantic heroes who have to die for me. Okay. True Love is on at the end. The Kanye song that uses the X quote. But watch my video about Donda 2 if you want to know my opinions about that. It's a great Kanye song. It's one of the best songs on Donda 2, but it's not an XXXTentacion song. He was nice to allow them to use this to help promote this. I'm sure that's why he did it. Because despite his megalomania, all that, I think Kanye really does care about X, and I think that's why that's on here. I'm going to briefly go over some thoughts I had over the first disc, the other disc. Because it opens up with his very first song, Vice City, and you really see him at his sort of best as a rapper. He's like trying super hard. He just found a free beat off of YouTube. He has like a real flow here, and you get the sense he could have done that. Like he could have been a singing guy, he could have been a rap guy, he could have been a sing rap guy. This is probably the most developed song I've ever heard by him, and it's his first song, which indicates to me that he intentionally was leaving things raw. I skipped a couple songs, got to a song called Rare, where he talks about beating his B-word like Ray Rice. She won't testify if you ask her. You should not use rap lyrics in court cases. I'm completely against that. But when it comes to trying to forgive artists for things that they've done, bragging about beating women and having them not testify against you when you are accused of being a woman beater does make it harder to sympathize with you. But again, the beauty of this whole project, the whole Look at Me project, is they didn't need to include this song. They included the song to remind you. The Jassé Foundation wants you to remember. Wants you to remember Geneva. They want you to remember the accusations. And good for them. Because it's all part of everything. FUXK is with Ski Mask the Slump God, and I just love it. I love him. Super weird beat, trap beat, double voice, everything's all messed up. Just screaming, F that, F that, F, just everything, just F, just all this aggression. I love it. I love it because a lot of times when I listen to like emo rap, I'm like, what the hell, man? When I was your age, I was listening to Welcome to the Terror Dome, I was listening to hip hop, not being rough and tough, and blah, and listening to Onyx, and you're all listening to, I'm so sad about my girlfriend. Like, I want some music that's like, and X is able to do both. Skip a bunch there, we get to the song called Failure's Not an Option. This is that Screamo style. It turns out, your professor loves Screamo music. God damn. I like 6ix9ine. Ooh, I do. I like his music. I like this. I like this stuff. I like this. I like the next song, I'm Sipping Tea in Your Hood. I like this Screamo stuff. Especially I'm Sipping Tea in Your Hood. This distortion and repetition and aggression and just these effed up bass sounds. Everything's just blurred out. It's great. It gives me that heavy metal, hard rocking feeling that I love that hip hop can do sometimes. And then we have a weird Spoke to the Devil in Miami, Said Everything Would Be Fine, a very sweet synthesizer sounds, and some of his more interesting lyrics. I'm always where the sun don't shine, the tears don't show. Won't hurt me now, 'cause heart's been broke. I hate myself, but I won't show. I constantly lose all my remorse, and it's 10 for the wolf and 3 for the shepherd, and it's 1 for the sheep, who led by the leopard, often gave his perception as a handle of a weapon, took a bite of your apple, gave me all you can offer. Now I'm trapped in a changing maze, setting my soul ablaze, couldn't control the pace. Where is this going? Hey, heartless is recklessness. It's a word of a pacifist to a word of a masochist. I am off the map, my lord. I spoke to Baphomet. He said he would save me if I gave him one last thing he needed. What is that thing? It's great. It's great. I mean, really, again, maybe if that's the direction he was going, a little bit more lyrical, a little bit more developed, we really did lose a great artist who was going to be doing more great stuff. Willy Wonka was a child murderer. Facts. And that's just like a Full Metal sound. And then the album ends with the song he sang from jail, which is fine. Not my favorite. So that's your answer. That's your answer. Who was Xxxtentacion? He was an abuser who made a lot of great music, helped to largely amplify and change the emotional range in hip-hop music. He is able to really help people with his music and his persona, and he was lost way too soon. And he was from Florida. These are my Patreons. They give me money. I wonder if I'm ever going to buy Xxxtentacion's music. At first I thought I wouldn't. First I sort of thought that I kind of hated it. But it actually turns out the more I listen to it, the more I like it. So, I don't know. Especially, tell me in the comments, like if I like his screamo stuff, what should I get? Because I love that screaming stuff. I don't know what it means, but it's provocative. Gets me going. Okay, well then, I have to get back to helping my wife remodel our bathroom. It involves using something called quick drying drywall, which dries really quick. That's why I'm wearing a gray shirt. You can't tell. This was a white shirt. It's covered in drywall. Till next time, there's the camera.